Good morning. It is 10:01 a.m. on Sunday, July 1st, 2018. I'm Christiana Ellis and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. It's Sunday, which means I am doing my rewatch of The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya with uh, season 1 episode I've lost track of what number it's supposed to be. 7. Mysterique sign. So this is where, as I said last week, the non-chronological order gets a little bit wonky, just because they chose to do some strange, like literally splitting the, two parts of a two-parter up. So we have the, instead of following up on the cliffhanger from Remote Island Syndrome Part 1, we're instead having another standalone episode. And this standalone episode, when we're doing this order, is probably the most, like, it's the most explicitly supernatural episode that we've seen so far when watching in this order, because I think the next runner up would have been the baseball game, where it was really unambiguous that Yuki was doing something. But in this one, the idea of enchanting a baseball bat to become able to hit a home run every time, compared to teleporting you to an alternate dimension in a desert where you fight a giant cricket. One of these things is more elaborate than the other. So in any event, this, I think, when watching in this order, is the biggest thing we've seen so far. That said, it's not necessarily the biggest thing that Kyon has seen so far, except that he's pretty much reacting like it is. So even though we know in this in this sequence of episodes, Kyon has seen some stuff that we haven't been shown yet. He nonetheless reacts to this one like, "Oh, this is new." But so in any event, let's just rewind a little bit and discuss some of how we got there. We begin the episode with Haruhi having made a new logo for the SOS Brigade, and honestly, even though it does look like something that could be made just in like MS Paint, it's a little bit interesting that the episode kind of presents it as being worse or more amateurish than I feel like the actual image is, because it's kind of a neat look to it. But the kind of reaction of Kyon and the little sound effect that plays when we first see it makes it almost sound like it's supposed to be worse than I think it is, but that's subjective, I suppose. But in any event, there's a brief argument where, Kyon has been talking about the stress from exams, and how Haruhi always finishes her exams early and then goes to sleep on the desk behind him. And he's feeling stressed about it. But so she's made this logo. She demands that he put it on the website. And there's basically arguing about... there's a fun little sequence where she argues in circles, as he points out, which is to say that he initially tries to say, why should I have to make the website? Why don't you do it? And her argument starts with, you need to do what I've told you to. After all, what is your other job here in the brigade? How are you ever going to better yourself if you never apply yourself, and you need to do things other than just what you're told? And he's kind of like, wait, so are you telling me that I should do what you say or that I shouldn't do what you say? In any event, the website is not performing up to Haruhi's hopes. But the next day, we actually have something that the episode kind of blows past, but I think is interesting and to consider. Because Haruhi is a little bit annoyed that Kyon has shown some initiative and put up posters suggesting that the SOS Brigade might be something that you could come to for like general jack of all trades counseling. Kind of like have a mysterious problem, come to us and we'll help you solve it, maybe, but with a little bit less emphasis on the idea that it might be supernatural. And we have, there's a dog outside, have Haruhi initially irritated to have anything happen that she didn't sort of think of first. But I think even though the episode kind of blows past it, it's worth for us noting that Kyon took the initiative on something to help the brigade, right? He explicitly says that it was in an effort to keep it from being shut down. But all he ever does is complain about it, right? This is going to be a theme for the whole series, by the way, is how does Kyon actually feel about everything that's happening? Because he sure complains a whole lot, right? But, and I think up to this point in this sequence, really the only reason for staying he's displayed is that at one point Mikuru, who is being abused by Haruhi, had expressed a desire like that she sort of feels like she has to stay, but you'll stay too, won't you? And so the desire to protect Mikuru from Haruhi is at least part of it. But he does demonstrate a lot through the series, and this is something that kind of rises and falls in our awareness as we watch. He complains all the time, but sometimes he takes actions that would seem to belie his complaints and that he does not even really seem 100% aware of. But that's kind of the this show's version of the will they won't they dynamic, that it's going to just walk that razor's edge for a while. Anyway, like I said, just even though the episode kind of blows past it, the idea that Kyon took something on his own initiative after Haruhi suggested that he should, something that helps the brigade. But in any event, we have a mystery when the website, with its new logo seems distorted. A girl shows up with Mikuru and says that her boyfriend is missing. Boyfriend turns out to be the president of the computer club, the guy who Haruhi had blackmailed with, pictures of him supposedly assaulting Mikuru, which of course we know is all faked. And so we're immediately thinking, wait a minute, what's happening here? Why is that guy involved? And also, Kyon briefly kind of says, if he has a girlfriend like this, then why does he spend all his time with the computer club? And I think, at first blush, you could sort of say, well, people can be into computers and have girlfriends. But at the same time, the suggestion, I think, being, spend all his time with the computer club. But that doesn't really get dealt with in any substantial way at first. But so they go and investigate the apartment where this kid supposedly lives alone. There's a fun moment where Haruhi, having now fully embraced this idea that they're going to solve a mystery, they go to this stranger's apartment, or not stranger, I guess they know who he is, but she tries to open the door, finding it locked, and then rings the doorbell. Kyon kind of points out that it's like, you could have done that in the reverse order. But she's going to leave, and because the door's locked, but then Yuki just opens it. We learn that there's some sort of a similar effect to a closed space, which we still don't really know very much about in this sequence of episodes. Something similar to a closed space, but different, is happening there. And, that leads to, Yuki and Koizumi are stressing that something important is happening, but they got to ditch Haruhi before they can actually deal with it. So they do. They fight this giant, camel cricket in the closed space. We see Koizumi use a fireball, suggesting that that is only a small fraction of his usual power. Yuki makes a giant, force field. There's kind of a joke about RPG style video games when the camel cricket heals itself and is like, a scarab has tended to its wounds. But in any event, we get this big action sequence with fighting this CGI cricket. Once all that's resolved, though, what happened essentially is that the cricket was actually a millennia old data entity similar to what Yuki represents, but different, like distinct from but similar to. And it had been basically just dormant on Earth until an information explosion woke it up. What was that information explosion? Apparently it was Haruhi's SOS Brigade symbol posted online that somehow, this is again Haruhi's intent, subconscious intent. What was the symbol intended to do? Attract interest to the website, right? Well, apparently what it did is wake up a dormant millennia old data entity that took over the brain and kidnapped the body of the only other guy who had any interest in the SOS Brigade website, which was the computer club president, who is still mad about having his computer stolen. And then it all seeming... the episode actually ends with a little bit of mystery where we learn, wait a minute, he really didn't have a girlfriend. So who was that girl? What was that all about? So he doesn't know who she is, so who is this girl? And so Kyon speculates maybe it was Yuki that made her come. And I don't think in the anime we ever actually learn any more specifics about that. I remember looking on the Wikia and thinking that character shows up in some of the other books or manga, but I think in the anime that's all we get of her character. So it was just left a little bit as a mystery of all that. But I love that the solution is literally just to take Haruhi's 5 petabyte sized diagram that she's made that unexpectedly contains this incredible amount of information, which I think is kind of hilarious. And then they just take it and they flip it, mirror image it, and then put it right back on the website like that and just hope she doesn't notice. I think that is an amazing solution to that, especially because we can totally get... it seems really unlikely that she ever would notice that because that's just the nature of Haruhi. She doesn't revisit these things. And so the idea that, that's how they resolve this issue of Haruhi once again has created this sort of supernatural thing just by wanting more people to visit the website. And also, even though we don't see it, the suggestion that it's, everyone else who had visited the website had to be rescued as well. And in any event, this is a standalone episode. It's got, those are the basic elements that we raise that I think are worth noting. I guess we also have Kyon muse on something that does come up a few other places too. So the 3 basic elements that fit into the larger picture for this story are Kyon's attitude, right? Just in the sense of complaining all the time, but nonetheless actually taking his own initiative and doing more than he is told. And just the idea of Why? Because, like Haruhi, seems like maybe his subconscious is on a slightly different level than his conscious mind complaints too, right? But tied to that is this idea that he's musing on of Mikuru's a time traveler, Yuki's an alien, Koizumi is an Esper. They all have not only their own specific reasons for wanting to be there, but also reasons that why Haruhi might have subconsciously drawn them to her. So Kyon, like, why is he there? What's special about him? Well, I mean, we can look at that, but it's something that is going to continue to be developed. But what we've seen so far watching the show is we know, even though he didn't expect it to take off the way it did, starting the SOS Brigade was his idea, right? He was the first person to talk to her and not just treat her like she's crazy. Is that it? Or is there something else? Right? And then the third, more like broader topic is just the nature of Yuki and like what is her deal exactly, because she acts very emotionless and passive most of the time, but every so often we get the impression, what is she actually feeling, and what would be the ultimate effect of that be? Well, next time we're going to return to Remote Island Syndrome and pick up on the cliffhanger where we left last time, which was that apparently an actual murder had happened on this cut-off, closed circle desert, island environment. But could Haruhi have really wished for someone to die? We'll find out next week as we continue our rewatch of The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. And in the meantime, I'll talk to you tomorrow for 5 more minutes.